Hey guys, welcome back to the Wellham's World YouTube channel, and today I've got something a little bit different for you. Usually if I'm making a video it'll either be a tier list or me playing a game with very little structure, minimal editing and not really like a script or anything like that, but today we are diving deep into something that I've been scripting for quite some time. On October the 25th, 2024 marked the release of Call of Duty Black Ops 6. And let me tell you, pretty much since that game's come out, I've touched very little grass, and at the time of recording this, I'm sitting at over Prestige Master level 200. I think I'm 204 or 5 at the time of physically recording this voiceover. But whilst I have found Black Ops 6's multiplayer to be the most enjoyable one for a long time, and I've also found myself having tons of fun in zombies, that's kind of where the topic for today's video came from. Call of Duty Zombies has been a point of contention within the community for quite some time. You know, you've got the die-hard fans who swear by the more traditional Zombies games, the ones who think Zombies peaked in sort of Black Ops 3, and everything after is just trash. And you've got the newer crowd who prefer the modern take on the mode, who often get griefed by the nostalgic purists who think their opinion is fact. You might even hear people say that if you like the newer Zombies games, you're not like a true fan, and that the older, simpler designs are the more real zombies. But let's be real, Zombies fans have always been passionate to the point of what I would describe as gatekeepery. It's a mode that's evolved over 16 years from its debut in World at War back in 2008, and since then we've seen iterations from Treyarch, Infinity Ward and Sledgehammer Games. Some of those were hits and some were, well, not. But no matter where you stand, there's one Zombies experience that, for better or for worse, seems to unite the community in dislike, and that is Vanguard Zombies. Now, I've been there for every major Zombies release, from playing World at War on the PS3 with my brother and my dad, physically screaming and crying in terror on maps such as Verrückt and Shinonuma, to streaming Black Ops 6 Zombies now. I've had some unforgettable moments, and to be honest, I can find something in every Zombies experience to enjoy, even ones that some folks might call bad or forgettable. But that's exactly where today's topic comes in. Despite all the amazing memories we've had with Zombies over the years, one game stands out in the Zombies community as the most universally disliked. Released alongside Call of Duty Vanguard in late 2021, Vanguard Zombies was met with criticism almost immediately. From the lackluster maps and story to its awkward mechanics, it felt like a major misstep for the franchise, which was known for creating some of the most memorable co-op experiences in gaming history. So today, we're going to take a step back, look at the development cycle of Vanguard Zombies, break down the features that fans hated, and see if the backlash was truly deserved or if the community's reaction was a bit overblown. Was Vanguard Zombies really that bad, or did it just get caught in a tough spot during a difficult time for the developers? Let's find out. So, before diving into the specifics of Vanguard Zombies, such as the maps, mechanics, story, weapons and fan reactions, it's important to first understand the context behind its development, including its release cycle and post-launch DLC support. Call of Duty Vanguard was released in 2021, developed by Sledgehammer Games. While Sledgehammer handled the multiplayer and campaign, the Zombies mode was once again entrusted to Treyarch. This arrangement led to mixed feelings in the Zombies community. Some fans were cautiously optimistic, given Treyarch's long history with the Zombies franchise, but others were more skeptical. After all, Vanguard was releasing only 1 year after Black Ops Cold War, meaning Treyarch had spent most of the year developing Cold War's post-launch content, while also working on an entirely new Zombies experience. With such a short development window, especially considering Treyarch had to balance the demands of supporting Cold War and launching a new mode in Vanguard, many felt it was an unrealistic expectation for the studio to deliver a polished and engaging experience. Personally, I believe Vanguard was set up to struggle from the outset. It's tough enough to create a satisfying game mode within the usual annual cycle, but when you factor in a rushed timeline and the competing deadlines of two major Call of Duty games, it's easy to see why Vanguard's Zombies mode fell short. Beyond the development timeline, there was also the unique challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Like many other projects at the time, the development for Vanguard faced disruptions from lockdowns, remote work and global delays. These real-world complications certainly didn't help the situation, and likely made an already difficult task even more daunting for the developers. So, the big question, was Vanguard Zombies truly a failure in itself, or did it simply fall short of the high expectations set by its predecessors? Were the issues a result of poor design, or was it simply a case of too many external challenges and unrealistic time constraints? And that's what we're going to look at as we go on in this video. Before diving into the mechanics and maps of Vanguard, it's important to address the setting and weaponry, two elements that are absolutely crucial in shaping the game's identity. Vanguard takes us back to the familiar battlegrounds of World War II, but by doing so, it risks feeling more like a rehash than a fresh experience. For the third time in this series, we're fighting through World War II, and for the second time, it's under Sledgehammer's banner. But is familiarity always a good thing? Let's dive into why, for many, Vanguard's World War II setting and weapons felt more recycled than revolutionary. So let's start by talking about the weapons. Vanguard brings us back the usual suspects, MP40, STG, and the rest of the World War II arsenal. Sure, these are iconic guns, but by this point, they've been used to death. It's the third time we've seen them in a Call of Duty World War II setting, and it starts to feel more like checking off a box than authoring something new. In a game that's supposed to transport us into the chaos of war, using the same weapons time and time again doesn't make it feel fresh, it kind of just makes it feel tired. Grounding the game in historical realism is important to a degree, but when it starts to limit your options and stifle creativity, it then becomes a problem. Vanguard's weapons felt locked in place by history, leaving very little room for imagination. Compare this to the Black Ops series, where Treyarch has continuously reinvented the wheel, from Black Ops 1's Cold War setting to Black Ops 3's futuristic warfare, and now we have Black Ops 6 with its 1990s settings. They've found ways to breathe life into every new entry. Not only do we get different time periods, but the weaponry changes too, constantly keeping us on our toes with new designs and new mechanics. Now, let's talk about the Zombies mode. Historically, Call of Duty Zombies has always been outlandish, over-the-top fun, with bizarre locations like the Moon, Alcatraz and Shangri-La. But in Vanguard, they took a much more grounded approach, especially with Der Anfang. The setting and tone, even the gameplay mechanics, seem to pull the series away from its roots in favour of realism. But why? Zombies has never been about historical accuracy or realism. It's always been twisted, chaotic, and an escape from the horrors of war. Suddenly, trying to make it more grounded in Vanguard just fell off. It's a stark contrast to the imaginative and over-the-top fun that Black Ops Zombies has always embraced. And then there's the equipment, which, let's be honest, what happened there? Cold War gave us a range of lethal gear that not only felt fun to use, but was also effective. The C4 in Vanguard feels like a complete joke in comparison, and it barely packs any punch. Molotovs, which should burn through enemies, often just left them stumbling away without any real impact. It's a real step back when you consider how satisfying the equipment in Cold War felt, and I think we are still feeling the effects of this in Black Ops 6 today. Instead of adding to the gameplay in Vanguard, the lethals often felt like a waste of time, which made me avoid using them altogether. In the end, Vanguard missed an opportunity to innovate. By sticking to a familiar World War II setting and recycling weapons, it felt more like a retread than a fresh experience. And with the equipment and Zombies mode falling flat, the whole package felt like it was just playing it too safe. And the result of that? A game that ultimately left me wanting more, not just from the story or the maps, but from the very foundation of what makes Call of Duty Zombies fun to play. Another major criticism of the Vanguard Zombies experience came from the maps themselves. The launch map, Der Anfang, is widely considered one of the worst launch maps in the franchise's history. Set in Stalingrad, it marked a departure from the traditional round-based Zombies formula, opting for a more experimental hub map design. Instead of fighting through endless waves of zombies on a classic round-based map, players entered portals to complete objectives, unlocking new areas as they progressed. In theory, this could have been an interesting take, but in practice, it definitely fell short. Der Anfang felt like a smaller, stripped-down version of Outbreak from Cold War, but without any of the variety or exciting gameplay elements that made Outbreak fun. There were fewer challenge types, fewer enemy types, and a lack of dynamic environments or trials made the gameplay feel stagnant. It was a hub map with very little to offer, and this emptiness quickly led to players to flock back to Cold War or older Zombies maps that were simply more engaging. Sadly, Terra Maledicta, the second map, followed in Duranfang's footsteps, reusing the same objective-based structure rather than going back to the beloved round-based style. It was another opportunity missed. Terra Maledicta could have been a decent round-based map, but instead it continued to suffer from the same issues that plagued Duranfang: lack of variety, lack of excitement, and a sense that there just wasn't enough content to keep players invested. Then came Shi no Numa, the third map. It was meant to be the big turning point, a return to the beloved round-based gameplay to shake things up and make fans get excited again. And yet, it was a remake. Yeah, you heard that right. Shi no Numa, the third map ever made for zombies, originally from World at War, was back once again. To its credit, it was the best iteration of Shi no Numa we've had, but that's hardly a high bar when you consider its history. Shi no Numa had already been remade for Black Ops and Black Ops 3, obviously via Zombies Chronicles, and it's hard to get excited about a map that's already been done multiple times before. While it was certainly better than the previous maps in the Vanguard cycle, the fact the best map was a remake of a 2009 map speaks volumes about how little innovation or new content Vanguard brought to the table. The new features were minor: an additional area, a new story Easter egg, and a buildable Wonder Wafer, but nothing that truly felt groundbreaking or fresh. I'll give Treyarch credit for not completely butchering a classic again as they did in Chronicles, but honestly, it felt like Vanguard was scraping the bottom of the barrel. And finally, the last map, the Archon, was a reskin of Terra Maledicta, the game's grand finale. With its showdown against the main antagonist, was essentially a recycled version of a previous map from the same game. This time, it had a green tint. It was an uninspired conclusion to an already lackluster experience. Remember when I said Terra Maledicta could have been a solid round-based map? Well, if anything, the Archon was proof that it would have been passable. Although, what's let the Archon down, specifically, is that we've literally seen it all before, only 2 maps prior. So to recap, 4 maps: Duranfang, the worst launch map in Zombies history; Terra Maledicta, which lacked any real replayability; Shi no Numa, a remake that, while the best map of the bunch, still felt tired; and finally, the Archon, a reskin of an already uninspired map. It's hard to feel anything but disappointed. Treyarch clearly wanted to innovate and break away from the established formula, but in the end, it was a big swing and an even bigger miss. Vanguard Zombies' experience was all over the place, trying new things but failing to deliver anything meaningful or exciting for fans. Now let's talk about the core mechanics of Vanguard Zombies. Since this mode directly followed Cold War Zombies, it's no surprise that many systems were carried over. First, the Pack-a-Punch system is nearly identical. There are 3 upgrade tiers. In round-based maps, Tier 1 costs 5,000, Tier 2 costs 15,000, and Tier 3 costs a steep 30,000, which is a total of 50,000 points to fully upgrade a single weapon. That's exactly the same as Cold War, and this system has since been replicated in Black Ops 6. However, in the 2 objective maps, Tier 1 costs 7,500 points, which obviously makes it a total of 52,500, because for some reason they just want to make you pay that little bit more. The weapon rarity system did not return. In Cold War, there were 2 types of salvage, common and rare, which were used to upgrade weapon tiers and armour. Vanguard streamlines this by using a single type of salvage that is used only to upgrade armour and create tacticals and lethals. One area where Vanguard diverges significantly, however, is in its perk system. There are 5 perks: Ethereal Haste, which is essentially Stamina Up; Demonic Frenzy, which is Speed Cola; Fiendish Fortitude, which is Juggernog; Venomous Vigour, which is Quick Revive; and Diabolical Damage, which is Deadshot Daiquiri. At first glance, these seem familiar. However, they now have 4 upgrade tiers. Tier 1 is free, Tier 2 is 2,500 points, Tier 3 is 5,000 points, and Tier 4 costs a hefty 7,500 points. Fully upgrading all 5 perks will set you back 75,000 points, 15,000 per perk. Spending 15,000 points for a fully upgraded Fiendish Fortitude, which performs similarly to the classic 2,500 point Juggernog, feels pretty excessive. If you're aiming for 2 fully upgraded weapons, max tiers, perks, you're looking at a staggering 175,000 points in total, an amount that borders on absurdity for a standard Zombies experience. Vanguard also introduced several new mechanics that ultimately didn't return in later titles: the Sacrificial Hearts, the Altar of Covenants, and the Tome of Rituals. Sacrificial Hearts were a unique currency earned by completing portal objectives on Duranfang and Terra Maledicta, or rewarded every 3 rounds on Shinonuma and the Archon. These hearts could be spent at the Altar of Covenants, which allowed players to select randomized upgrades called Covenants that offered passive abilities. Some of these included things like Ammo Gremlin, which reloads your stowed weapon over time, or Death Blow, which returns ammo to your weapon on critical kills. Covenants could be swapped out at any time, allowing a slight layer of strategy to builds. And while it is interesting, the random nature often limited their usefulness in high round play. The Tome of Rituals allows you to upgrade field upgrades, such as using Sacrificial Hearts. However, compared to their Cold War counterparts, field upgrades in Vanguard felt significantly underpowered. And while I appreciate the attempt to innovate, especially through systems like the Altar and the Hearts, they never felt essential to gameplay. In my experience, I often hoarded Sacrificial Hearts simply because I didn't feel the upgrades were worth spending them on. Now, let's try to unpack the story of Vanguard Zombies. And I say try because it is just a little bit of a mess. Vanguard Zombies is technically a continuation of the Dark Aether storyline that began in Black Ops Cold War. That story introduced a new universe where the Dark Aether is a parallel dimension full of ancient entities and chaotic power. In Cold War, we followed Requiem and Omega as they discovered and tried to control these otherworldly forces. It was grounded in Cold War era geopolitics, but with a supernatural twist. In Vanguard, the story shifts completely in tone and setting. We go back to World War II and follow a new cast of characters. The player takes on the role of an undead soldier empowered by one of the several Dark Aether entities. The central conflict revolves around the villain, Uberführer Wolfram von List, a Nazi officer who forms a pact with a Dark Aether entity named Cortifex the Deathless. This pact gives him the ability to raise the dead and wage a supernatural war with the help of undead soldiers. To oppose Von List and Cortifex, players are aided by 4 other Dark Aether entities: Syraxis the Shadow, Invicta the Destroyer, Bellacar the Warlock, and Nauticus the Conqueror. Each of these entities has their own backstory and motives for rebelling against Cortifex. The idea is that you, the player, become a vessel for these beings, and together you work to stop Von List's plan for world domination through undead armies. The problem is, Vanguard tells this story mostly through static, in-game dialogue, audio logs, and vague objectives. There are no cutscenes at launch, no real campaign progression, and very little player interaction with the actual narrative. This made the story feel disconnected, especially compared to the far more cinematic and character-driven narrative of games such as Cold War, and before that, games like Black Ops 3. As for how it connects to the Dark Aether storyline, it technically expands the lore of the Dark Aether dimension. We learn that it's not just a chaotic realm, but one with a hierarchy, factions, and godlike beings. Cortifex is essentially a tyrant within that realm, and the other entities are his former allies turned enemies. This adds some depth to the Dark Aether mythos, suggesting that its influence stretches back far before the Cold War, possibly even to ancient times. However, Vanguard does very little to move the overarching story forward. It functions more like a side story or a prequel than a true continuation. There are a few threads, like the fate of the Dark Aether entities and their war for power, that could have connected into Black Ops 6 or future entries, but as it stands, the story feels more like a detour than a vital chapter. In the end, Vanguard Zombies had the potential to expand the universe in interesting ways, but due to poor storytelling, minimal in-game context, and lack of payoff, it ended up being one of the most forgettable narratives in the Zombies saga. Now let's talk about the community reaction to Vanguard Zombies. And to be blunt, it was overwhelmingly negative. From the moment Vanguard Zombies launched, players voiced frustration across social media platforms, Reddit threads, YouTube comment sections, and gaming forums. The mode was widely criticised for being incomplete, uninspired, and rushed. At launch, Duranfang offered no round-based gameplay, no restory quest, no main storyline progression, and minimal replay value. Fans who were used to the intricate map design and layered storytelling of previous Zombies entries felt blindsided by what many saw as a stripped-down, soulless experience. The outcry wasn't just about missing features, it was about the direction. Many longtime fans felt that Vanguard Zombies lacked identity. The mode attempted to mix elements of Cold War Zombies with Outbreak style, objective gameplay, but ended up delivering a repetitive loop with very little payoff. Internet discussions frequently described it as a glorified demo or a beta for a better mode that never ended up coming. Even professional reviews didn't hold back. Gaming outlets like IGN and GameSpot criticised Vanguard Zombies for its lack of content, confusing story, and overall feeling of being undercooked. Metacritic user scores for the Zombies mode were particularly harsh as well, often sitting far lower than the campaign or multiplayer components. Now, when we compare this to Cold War Zombies, the contrast is stark. While Cold War wasn't perfect, it was generally well received. The introduction of loadouts, field upgrades, and streamlined progression gave new life to the series. Maps like Die Maschine, Mauer der Toten, and Forsaken gave players a healthy mix of innovation and nostalgia. Cold War also had a coherent narrative, frequent updates, and full Easter egg quests, elements that kept players engaged for months. Community content creators like Mr. Rufflewaffles and Noah J456, for example, regularly posted guides, theories, and breakdowns that kept the discussion alive. With Vanguard, those same creators often expressed disappointment, with many stepping back from Zombies coverage entirely. And if you go even further back towards Black Ops 3, and the difference becomes even more drastic. That era was peak of the community, from iconic maps like Shadows of Evil and Horizon Tracker to a rich, interconnected storyline and deeply rewarding gameplay. The hype for every map release was massive, with thousands of players staying up late just to experience the next chapter of the Aether story. The community was vibrant, creative, and united in a way that we haven't quite seen since. And in contrast to that, Vanguard Zombies left the community fractured and in many ways burned out. It's one of the few Zombies entries that most players simply walked away from, not out of frustration with the difficulty or anything, but because of the lack of passion in the product itself. It felt like Zombies was no longer being treated as a pillar of the Call of Duty franchise, but more like an afterthought. In the end, Vanguard became a cautionary tale. It showed that even a beloved mode with a loyal fan base can fall flat without proper attention, vision, and respect for what made it special in the first place. So, was Vanguard Zombies really that bad? Honestly, yeah, it kinda was. It tried to experiment, but without direction. It borrowed from Cold War without understanding what made it good, had no identity, no momentum, and worst of all, no soul. But that doesn't mean Treyarch's Zombies legacy is dead. Black Ops 6 is already winning players back, as it has been nothing short of fantastic. And if anything, Vanguard shows how important it is to give this mode the love, time and resources it deserves. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. What was your experience with Vanguard Zombies? Did you ever play it? Is it one that you skipped entirely? For me, I played it minimally, and I think the only one I've actually skipped is Modern Warfare Zombies. Do you think it deserved all the hate? And what lessons do you think future Call of Duty should learn from it? What kind of style of zombies do you prefer? Do you prefer what we're getting in Black Ops 6 or what we had in Black Ops 3, 4, or even earlier than that? I know a lot of people were a big fan of Black Ops 2. So let me know. I'm always up for a discussion in the comments. I'm always up to chat. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and like I said, leave a comment with your opinion. Thank you for watching. Take care everybody, and goodbye.